quite lean. Good. Okay. So right now, I know there's only two of you in classroom and two of you on Zoom. I'm anticipating a few people kind of coming in late, but it's our final lecture. So we've got a little bit to cover today, and I'll get going right away because we had a couple of slides. All right, a couple of slides left over from last week. We were talking about body image and scars, and I wanted to bring up fatness. Which in Western cultures, a lot of times we equate fatter bodies with laziness or being unhealthy. And where that comes from is if you are incredibly lazy and unhealthy, a lot of times you do put on weight. Now, realistically, I've met a lot of thin people that not to be mean, but I would consider them pretty unhealthy. I've also met some fat people that are really active, very healthy. So realistically, we can't assume something about someone's health just based on their body size. It's difficult. In our history of US society, we go back and forth. We had a few decades of some more body positivity, some more body activism going on. But realistically, in the last couple of years, I've noticed a backslide where we're putting a lot of emphasis on thinness again. What worries me, and I say this as a fat person that went through, I was getting sidetracked because I'm not on this video. Hold on. Let me connect to the other one. Not that it matters, but there we go. So what I was going to say is, as somebody who went through like the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a really big emphasis on being not healthy, but skinny. So what's unfortunate is we're now seeing another push for that. And I'm seeing it how now if I see advertisements for GLP-1 medications, usually the advertisements aren't saying, hey, take this medication for diabetes. They're saying, take this to lose weight. Now, is that a side effect of the medications? Yeah, but it's now being marketed as a weight loss gimmick. So I urge caution. A lot of times when things seem too good to be true, it's because they are. So be cautious. We don't know the long-term effects of medications like that. And of course, if you're diabetic, I'm not going to look twice if you're on that medication. I'm going to be like, yeah, that's what it's there for. We have even at certain times declared a war on obesity. Me and other fat friends made jokes when that happened of like, am I being drafted? Who's fighting this war? We weren't being drafted, but other cultures oftentimes view thinness as unhealthy. And like I said, we also can't be assuming things about thin people, good or bad. But I think of a colleague of mine who's Canadian, so North American. And at the time, in the fashion world, she would have been considered plus size, but I wouldn't consider her, she wasn't as big as I am. For reference, it's important to the story. She went to do research and work in South Africa. And when she was there, she hired a local woman to be her guide. And this local woman would greet her in the mornings by saying, "Good morning, you beautiful fat woman." And she said the first couple of times it took her a minute because she was used to fat being a bad word that somebody would say as a bad thing about you. And she had to kind of remind herself, like, no, realistically, it's not that she's saying, "Good morning, you slob." She's saying, "Good morning, you look plump and healthy, ready to start the day." And she said after a few weeks of this, she started to lean into it like, yeah, I am a beautiful fat woman. Thank you. Like I'm enjoying this mantra. So in a lot of cultures, plumpness is valued over thinness. Whoops. I just asked to unmute somebody. That is a lie. I was trying to admit someone. Ignore me. You don't need to unmute yourself. So looking at our human history, if we look at the archaeological record, even 30,000 so years ago, bigger bodies may have been celebrated. We have found various Venus figurines, like the lady on the screen, that depict large women with enlarged breasts, big bellies, big hips, so forth, usually with tiny heads and tiny feet. This woman was discovered in 1908 in Willendorf, Austria, so named the Venus of Willendorf. If you've ever seen the famous statue, the Venus de Milo, she famously lost her arms. We named this one Venus because at first we thought she didn't have arms. She does. They're very tiny and resting atop her breasts. So they're there. They're just not the focal point. There's been a lot of theories about why these little Venus figurines pop up. We can tell that they were used as some sort of adornment, worn as jewelry, carried with people as like an idol. The first theory, this is not saying all men would think this, but the first man that discovered it, he said, big boobs, it's Paleolithic porn. Now, could it have been used as that? Yeah, people are creative. They can, get creative with whatever. But very likely, we think they may have been a fertility idol. If you are trying to get pregnant and carry a pregnancy, we know that you put on weight, and you usually in the belly, but also the hips and the breasts. So this looks like a pregnant woman, and a lot of the Venus figurines look like pregnant women. So it may have been a little fertility idol. If I'm trying to manifest a healthy pregnancy, I'm going to carve one of these little ladies and carry her with me or wear her as a necklace to try and promote a healthy pregnancy. Now, a growing theory that I enjoy is we used to think they were made by men for men. Now a growing theory is that they were made by women for women. And one of the reasons for that is 30,000 years ago, we didn't have full-length mirrors. So if you wanted to carve a woman's figure and you're a woman, you might just look down at your own body. Some of them look like their proportions might be a little off, but what I'll show you on the next slide is we took a model, a pregnant model, nude. So there is nudity on the next slide, but I believe in you. It's not sexual. It won't be weird. But we bring it up because we basically positioned a camera from her viewpoint and had her looking down at her body. And because of the angle, the proportions actually match up to the figurines. Realistically, we're never going to know 100% for sure what the figurines were made for. And they also may have had multiple reasons, multiple uses. On the next slide is the little comparison where you can see a pregnant model from top down and how that lines up with a Venus figurine. So you can kind of see it's pretty similar. That I would be like the most boring companion to Doctor Who, because they'd be like, do you want to go see new alien life? And I'm like, I want to go ask Paleolithic people why they carved those little ladies. That's what I want to know. So that is the end of last week. I will get into, I got somebody joining. I will get into birth and death. Sounds very exciting. This is where we rely on the Galanti book, looking at birth and death. I figure they're both unavoidable things. We were all born at some point, and we're all, hopefully a very long time from now, going to die. Like we're organic beings. But I'm going to start with birth. Now, unfortunately, giving birth throughout human history is a dangerous thing. And sometimes pregnancies don't go all the way through to birth, to a healthy birth. Sometimes we can have what's called a miscarriage. This is when an embryo or fetus dies before the 20th week of pregnancy. For a lot of Western medical professionals, they would say, as long as it's not a certain group of miscarriages, the average miscarriage you can experience at home. You don't necessarily need a hospital stay for it. But sometimes you do. And sometimes, especially if you've never experienced one before, you go to the hospital because all you notice is, I'm pregnant and I'm bleeding. That's not normal. Get my butt to the hospital. But hospital stays in Western medicine, at least in America, are pretty expensive. So we're usually very quick as patients to say, Give me the okay to get the heck out of this hospital. Galanti brings up an example in the Roma or Romani people. They have a concept of merime, which basically is this idea that you are spiritually unclean during and after giving birth. Now, it doesn't mean unclean in the event or in the case of like, she's unclean and we need to stay away from her. It's more of like, your body just went through something pretty, well, I'll say traumatic, but birth can also be beautiful and wonderful. But like your body kind of reacts like it's a trauma. I say that as someone that's never given birth, but like, yeah, your body goes through a lot when you go through that. So it's more this idea that you as the patient need to be protected while you're giving birth and right after you give birth. Western medicine will say, the miscarriage is done, it's unfortunate, but you get the all clear, you can go home. This culture says it's not the all clear. Even in the event of a miscarriage, as long as you are still bleeding, you are considered spiritually unclean and it's unsafe to go home. So in this case, they had a patient, the bleeding had stopped, they kind of gave her the unfortunate news that it was a miscarriage. And they weren't trying to kick her to the curb, but they basically said, hey, it looks like everything is going okay. I mean, obviously something went wrong, but for the most part, your body is reacting normally. You have the all clear, you can go home. And she said, no, I don't want to go home. It's not ready. I'm not ready yet. I need to stay longer. And at first the doctors were confused, like most Americans want to get the heck out. And she was like, no, I need at least 24 hours. I need to wait until the bleeding is stopped. Now, realistically, the doctors could have said, and if her insurance was rude, they could have kicked her to the curb and said, no way, you got to get out. But from what I understand with Galanti's story is they kind of worked around it and said, okay, we understand you can stay until the bleeding is stopped. Basically said they'd keep her under observation. She was okay, she was healthy, but it just kind of helped ease some of her anxiety. Now we know, either from having kids of your own, being around pregnant people, or watching any movie with a pregnant person, sometimes you get cravings when you're pregnant. And where it can be a little confusing is some cravings you're not supposed to eat while you're pregnant. Things like, I'm trying to think, the basics that a lot of us know are like raw fish, no sushi, no alcohol. Now, the alcohol thing is going to depend. In some parts of Europe, they'll say you can have a glass of wine a day. It's going to depend on where you are in the world. A lot of times when somebody is pregnant and wants to be, we will prescribe things to help them have a healthy pregnancy. Things like prenatal vitamins. It's a ton of like folic acid. I don't know what the other vitamins are in it, but it gives moms a great boost of nutrients, which is great. You're literally making another human life. When my best friend she's been pregnant multiple times, but one of the last times she was pregnant, she had a day where she said, oh, I'm so tired and I don't know why. I didn't do anything. And I'm like, you probably like grew an organ or something. What do you mean you didn't do anything? You're growing a human in you. I'm like, I'm impressed as hell. Trust me, you did things. So we mentioned last week about hot and cold practices. Where it can get tricky is a lot of things we tell pregnant people to eat prenatal vitamins, food high in protein, but those are all considered hot, and pregnancy is also a hot condition. So sometimes we'll have patients, you'll say, hey, make sure you eat a lot of protein, and they'll say, oh, that could throw me out of balance. Is there medical research that says the hot and cold balance is correct? know, and the medical doctor is going to know that and probably want to say, oh, that's all fake, don't worry about it. But realistically, he or she is not asking them to throw out just one thing. They're asking them to kind of throw out their entire culture. So rather than argue with them, we can just say, okay, you don't want to take prenatal vitamins because they're hot. Pregnancy is hot. Why don't you take them with a cold beverage? And then it cancels each other out.
My cousin was addicted to Wesco ice cubes.
Oh.
He had twins. The
Wow.
last 3 months, she was like every day she needed this big,
Of ice.
can of ice every day.
Mm,
It probably was cooling the body for her.
probably.
Yeah.
What is that? What?
Yes. Okay. I was meaning to give it to you like way before, but I wanted to wait towards the end of the semester.
It's amazing. Where did it come from?
It's an old souvenir that me and my mom and my sisters got. In Teotihuacan in Mexico.
Yeah.
Souvenir from there. I got to go on the pyramids, and the lady was out there selling a bunch of them.
This is amazing. Thank you. This is so cool.
Yeah, it's anthropologists and
Yeah.
like I said, it's a souvenir.
I got sidetracked. I'm like,
I went like years ago though.
yeah.
That was a long time ago.
I love buying little things like that though. Like that's amazing. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry guys.
I'm easily sidetracked with gifts like a crow. Just
I'm for real. I was like, I should give this to her, and I was like, I'll wait towards the end.
very nice. A+ for the day. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not.
No, I see, and before you did, I was like, I'm gonna wait till the end. That's why I was waiting. I was like, no, I was like, oh, I don't want her to,
No, you're good. So looking at prenatal care, we medicalize the crap out of pregnancy in our country. If you are trying to be pregnant, find out you're pregnant, usually you find out from like a clear blue test that you got at Walgreens. But for a lot of Americans, the next step is immediately to your doctor, your OBGYN, to confirm the pregnancy and get you started on lots and lots of appointments to basically make sure that you and the baby are doing okay. But that is a very American thing, a very Western thing, where we medicalize the crap out of pregnancy. Where it can be confusing is a lot of indigenous communities, they think the hospital or the doctor is if you're sick. And pregnancy isn't a sickness, so why would you go to the doctor unless something is wrong? Where that can be confusing to doctors is if you have a patient who maybe moved here a few months ago, they come into you and say, hey, I'm 8.5 months pregnant. I want to do this plan, blah, blah, blah. And you as an OBGYN might say, well, where the heck have you been? You should have been here every month checking on the growth of you and your baby and all of that. It doesn't mean she doesn't care. It doesn't mean she doesn't wish, goodwill for her unborn baby. It just may mean she comes from a community where you don't go to the doctor unless something is wrong. And thankfully, nothing's gone wrong in her pregnancy. So she's thinking, why would I go to the doctor?
I saw these. A few of them. I saw not all of them. I saw a few. Pretty. On the slide.
Now, giving birth can sometimes be painful. It's one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan. I always joke that I was in the room for my niece's birth, and I'm grateful to have been there. That is as close as I would ever like to be. That was good enough for me. And I was there to root on my best friend and welcome her little girl into the room. I was so excited to be there. It was definite for me a moment of like, this will never happen. You're doing great. I will never do this. You are doing so well. In some cultures, we have a tendency to be more expressive, and in other cultures, we have a tendency to be stoic. Stoic means not being expressive, not showing a lot of outward displays of emotion, being a bit more quiet and reserved. In many Asian cultures, they favor quiet control during labor pains. If you've ever watched a movie or a TV show where someone gives birth, they are screaming and hooting and hollering. And that does sometimes happen. Again, I've never done it. I might also scream and hoot and holler. But in a lot of Asian communities, they want you to be quiet and just focus on your breathing and in complete control. The idea is that women who cry out during birth bring shame upon themselves and their family. Galanti talks about a Cherokee woman who also comes from a Stoic culture. She gave birth in complete quiet control, just focus on her breathing. She also gave birth in a traditional position. Western medicine has you lie on your back. It's so that the doctors have better access to the area they're working with. Realistically, and please don't think I'm comparing children to poop, but they come out of similar located areas. We talked about daily living and going and using the potty and how some people use squatting toilets. And we in the Western world have now figured out squatting actually does help you poop. Same thing. If you're trying to get a baby out, squatting is actually more helpful. Gravity is on your sides. It opens up your pelvis. Now, mind
There's
you,
definitely funner ways than that to get the babies out. But whatever, we'll stop. We don't need to talk about that.
He's talking about it.
I can barely hear. Sorry, my volume isn't great. So I don't want to ignore people, but
No, you're good. I was just saying that there's better ways of getting it out than squatting, but we don't need to talk about that in class.
There's better ways than squatting. I was gonna jokingly say,
In a room full of pregnant women.
squatting may be one of the best options, but I will also jokingly say when your best friend is in the middle of labor, she doesn't want to hear that. When I'm like, did you know anthropologically? She's like, I will kick you out. I'm like, just kidding, you're doing great.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me.
Yeah, I'm like, she doesn't
That's
want to hear
great.
that at all. This might start a video I'm just gonna kind of skip past. There we go.
I heard someone say to the nurse, I'll make it quick, the nurse just said, breathe, breathe, and I saw her go, you breathe. I was like, oh, shoot, the heck?
Oh, I'm sure nurses and OBGYNs have been screamed at.
She's like she's so like chill and nice and she breathe.
Different animal.
Saw that. I was right there. I just didn't say I didn't say anything.
Animalistic instinct.
I was just shocked.
Yeah, that is shocking. So if we have Stoic cultures, then we definitely have more expressive cultures. Mexican culture, on the whole, usually is more expressive. That doesn't mean every Mexican person you meet is going to be super loud and dramatic, but they have a tendency for the whole society to at least like be okay with that. Versus if we think of like,
No, they're very expressive. It's okay.
you like notice.
Like you said it last time, I can say it. Yeah, it's just yeah, I know.
That's why I usually get along.
Even when
I'm loud.
even when they're drinking or something.
Is the common cry, I'm not going to try to imitate it, but the common cry while giving birth is ay, ay, ay.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, some doctors might think, she's just doing this for show. She just wants to be dramatic. But the ay, ay, ay is usually accompanied with a rhythmic breathing that acts like Lamaze breathing that we teach pregnant people. So realistically, is she causing a commotion? Yeah, but it's also helping her. And there have been studies done that say, if you're in pain, sometimes yelling out or cursing helps. So if you stub your toe, you let out a curse, let it out. I've not done any actual studies on that, but I definitely curse if I'm in pain. In Arab cultures, They are also usually a bit more expressive, and within many Arab cultures, men are not allowed in the delivery room. Even if you're the dad of the baby being born, it's not done. Similar to Merimee, they are thought to be kind of at a very vulnerable spot. And so you limit how many people are in the room, and it's kind of a women-only situation.
Yeah, that won't work for me. I'm gonna have to deliver my baby.
He's gonna be class to top.
Get you an air.
Right? So because the men aren't allowed in the room, a lot of times the women are kind of amping up the loudness as a way to, one, include him, but also let him know, like, by the way, what I'm doing isn't easy. Just in case you're sitting out in the waiting room chilling, I need you to know this isn't an easy thing that I'm doing. It's worth it, but it's not easy. So a lot of times in Arab culture, you also give a gift to the mom. In Western culture, we call it a push present. They may have a different term for it in different cultures, but it's the idea that you give a gift. It's going to depend on your status. So if you're broke like me, that gift might look like a good old bouquet of flowers. Another friend of mine, because they won't let you eat while you're in labor, which that doesn't make sense to me, but I'm not an OBGYN. Yeah. And so you give birth and then you're starving and you don't want hospital food.
If they have to do a C-section.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Thank you.
Fair enough, but that is.
Yeah.
They give you ice, right?
Yeah, they'll let you have ice chips. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of my friends, her husband, every single time she gave birth, he would wait until they got the all clear that she's healthy, baby's healthy. And then he'd turn to her and go, what do you want? And one year it was Pizza Hut, one year it was Olive Garden, and I think another year it was Burger King. And he would go and get like a bunch of food, bring it back, and he'd obviously let her have first dibs. And then anybody that was there, he'd be like, oh, I also have some Panera bread. Come have a snack. And I was like, that was genius. And it gave him something to do with his nervous energy of like, okay, I'm going to go get food. And then he gets to feel like, I don't want to say he didn't help because he was there, but he feels more involved.
Yeah. Making a difference, helping, being there, supportive.
Now, historically, we have tried to make giving birth as painless as possible. And sometimes we've done some not great solutions. Twilight sleep is an amnesic condition characterized by insensitivity to pain without loss of consciousness. Twilight sleep is not the medication, it is the condition you're in from the medication. But it was induced by an injection of morphine and scopolamine. Really fun combination. Basically, what it would do is it would keep you alert, because if you go unconscious, then we have to do a C-section. So we need to keep you conscious. We can't just knock you out for childbirth. I believe even C-sections, usually they keep you awake. I'm having a moment. I always think of Goldie Hawn when she was giving birth via C-section.
Just behind the curtain.
Yeah, behind the curtain, but she couldn't see what was happening. And they said, it's going to be a boy. And she said, no, it's not. And it was Kate Hudson. She just didn't even look. She was just like, no, it's not. And then they're like, oh, just kidding. You're right. It's a girl. And she's like, I knew it. But I believe it was kind of like joked about that she had like a fresh manicure and stuff because she scheduled her C-section. And I'm like, you know what? Do whatever works for you. I can't say what works better because I'm not doing it. So.
I started in pain. I went to a shower, did my hair, did everything. Like I've got hours of pain. Yeah, because I knew I was gonna have hours of pain and.
One of them strong, they just know what's up, women. All right.
Like, oh, here we go. Yep. So twilight sleep would basically keep you alert, but give you no memory of the process. And psychologically, that has had some effects. We now know there's a lot that goes into the actual giving birth process. As painful as it is, my understanding is you naturally get a little bit of amnesia once you've got that little baby in your arms. Your brain is just like, ah, it was worth it, and kind of makes it feel like, yeah, I'm willing to do this a few more times.
Yeah, I heard that.
That's what I've heard at least. So twilight sleep was first used in 1899. In 1915, it was so widespread, it was said that it was going to make childbirth so painless that it was, what is the quote? It was going to bring a new era for woman and through her for the whole human race. Basically saying, we're going to make childbirth so easy peasy, everybody's going to want to do it. And realistically, again, I love kids, but it's because I love kids I know I do not have the patience to raise them. Even if you told me, Stephanie, you can have human children and you will never have to go through the pain of childbirth, I would still be like, nah, I'm good. They're adorable. I think I'm better with kids when I have the freedom to go, okay,
I'm done.
I'm tired. I'm going to go home. Whew. Aunt Muffy's tired, because that's what they call me. Aunt Muffy. Yeah, that's.
I like it. It's cool.
Somehow my nephew, when he was like 1.5, couldn't say Stephanie or Steffi, and it came out Muffy. And I've been Muffy for almost 19 years now, so I take it with honor. Now, some of the reasons why twilight sleep was discontinued is women would, so one thing is they could sometimes thrash around. And so to avoid that, they would tie them down to the beds. But then when you thrash around with restraints, you get bruises like carpet burn. Plus, you wake up with no memory of giving birth. So these poor women were coming to consciousness, handed a baby they have no recognition of giving birth to, which for some women, that can diminish the bond. That's not to say that adopted kids aren't loved dearly, but sometimes it diminishes that immediate bond when you have no memory of giving birth. My favorite example from a colleague of mine who's a little older than me, she was born and her mom they had done twilight sleep. This was towards the end before it was fully discontinued. Her mom was high as a kite, gave birth, has no memory of giving birth, hadn't chosen a name leading up to it because this was pre-sonograms, so she didn't know if she was having a boy or a girl yet. The nurses come in and say, you have a healthy baby girl, and hand her the baby. And she looks at the baby like, yeah, sure, that's mine. And they say, what are you going to name her? This woman, still high, looks out the window and picks the first name she sees. And this woman is so grateful that the hospital was across the street from a Heather Elementary. Her name is Heather. But she's like, my mom was so high, she would have named me Shell Oil. Like, it did not matter. Now, she would have regretted that and probably changed her name. But she's like, she would have named me anything. I'm amazed my name isn't Elementary. And at least I got the Heather part. So, yeah, it's kind of a funny story, but it shows how out of it these women were. I understand we want to make pain, or we want to take away the pain from childbirth, make it as easy as possible and as safe as possible, but we also need to make sure that it's the best, safest option and the healthiest option for parent and baby. Now, I mentioned it's kind of dependent on the culture on who's invited to the delivery room. In standard American practice, the father of the children are also there. Now, the man on the floor in the photo is because sometimes when you've never witnessed childbirth and you witness it happening to someone you love and care about, it can be a bit shocking.
Yeah.
A lot of things go on. Yeah, and so sometimes they get weak and hit the floor. At the childbirth I was present for, father of the child was there. At one point in the throes of childbirth, I hear her sister say something and I hear her say, you better sit down. And I turn around and he was white as a sheet. And I was like, holy shit, Josh, sit down before you fall down. And he's like, I'm okay, like wavering. And I'm like, sit, because I'm like, we cannot have you also on the floor. Like, you gotta sit down. So
He was probably like, whoa.
Oh, he was like amazed and a little horrified and all. Mind you, I was also amazed and horrified. Her sister had already pushed out 3 kids. She was like, this, hold that. So,
She's probably fixing the pillows.
oh, she was
I know what to do.
she was the pro. I was there for comic relief. She was the pro. Like she'd done it a million times. Yep. Yeah. Now, in the Orthodox Jewish tradition, men are not supposed to touch a woman during her birth. Similar to Merimee, she's considered unclean. And when we hear unclean, that makes it sound like we think she's icky and sick. And it's less about that and more about protecting her spiritually. That, from a spiritual viewpoint, is you're literally bringing life into the world. You are pretty tied to the divine. And so they give her a break spiritually of like, let's not introduce new energies. Let's not make this less fun for her. Some Asian cultures, it's not your mom that helps, it's your mother-in-law. And we in the West have a joke that like you don't get along with your in-laws, but a lot of people do. A lot of people don't. Oh, I won't name names, but I have a friend that's probably going to get divorced and she's already like, I'm going to miss my in-laws. They're lovely. And I'm like, you can still stay friends with them. Like, there's no rule that says you have to like cut them off. I'm like, if they're cool with it, you can still stay friendly.
It takes now.
Yeah, you can do it.
Right.
But the reason for this, especially in Korea, is in the home, you usually have multi-generations living in one home. So the matriarch of the family, the mom in charge, she takes her first daughter-in-law kind of as her deputy, the next person in charge. And so when that daughter-in-law gets pregnant, she helps her out. She helps her with the lying in process. She helps with the birth and helps with that initial raising when you're, resting from giving birth. Now, C-sections or cesarean sections, I'm going to be honest, kind of creep me out a little more than actual natural childbirth because they just cut right through your abdomen and that sounds awful. But sometimes they're necessary. I was a C-section baby. One time, I didn't come up with this joke, somebody on the internet did, but one time a few years back, I referred to myself as a tumor baby because I was extracted. My mom did not appreciate that. She was like, that's horrifying. Now, back in the day, it used to be if you have one C-section, you have to have C-sections moving forward. I believe that has changed, but that's why I was a C-section baby. My sister was a natural baby, or so they thought, but they let my mom go damn near a month past her due date. My sister now is a petite lady. She was a big baby because that was a month-old baby. I'm like, no wonder why our poor mom had so many issues. Yeah, her head was massive. I'm like, no wonder why. So because of that, I was a planned baby. They chose my birth date. And I tease them, my parents are not into astrology, but I tease them when they call me stubborn. And I'm like, you gave me the birthday of the first day of Scorpio season. You could have had a Libra. You were one day off. That's on you.
Scorpio.
Yeah.
I'm a Cancer.
Yes, water signs. Yeah. I enjoy astrology. I'm not going to like, plan my whole life around it, but
it's fun. It's
fun.
It is.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I didn't want you guys to be like, oh my God.
I don't like
This is a Scorpio. I get a lot.
or
Now,
I'll bark. No.
that's pretty accurate. Yeah, I can't even deny that. So talking about
I know you.
talking about C-sections, they are technically operations. They are surgeries. In the Hmong culture and Asian culture, their belief is that if you undergo a surgery, your soul can leave during the surgery. You are spiritually unsafe and your soul could just vacate. So the idea of a C-section freaks a lot of Hmong people out because they're thinking it's not only a surgery on the mom, it's a surgery on the baby. Everybody's involved. Now, realistically, even if culturally you might say, I don't want a C-section, there are some instances where that's going to be the only way it's going to happen. Not going to be helpful if the doctors just argue and say, no, you're wrong. But instead, what they can try to do is tell them like the statistics of how safe it is, or the statistics of the fatality if we don't do it. Like, this is the only option. And so realistically, if your options are, I might lose my soul or I'm for sure going to die, me personally would say I'll risk the soul. But that's me because I'm not Hmong. So it might be very different for them. Your placenta is the organ attached to the uterus, or to the lining of the uterus, excuse me, during pregnancy and linked to the baby by the umbilical cord. It is how we get our nutrients. What a lot of people who have only seen childbirth in a movie don't understand is once you give birth, you have to pass the placenta. Now, what we do with it is going to be different on different cultures. Most Americans, we treat it as bio-waste. It gets tagged and bagged, disposed of by the hospital. But you can request it back. In many Asian cultures and many Arab cultures, they bury it. The belief is that it is part of that baby that was born. The Hmong culture specifically believes your placenta is your soul's jacket. And so the idea is, hopefully that baby has a really long life, but eventually they will also be buried in the ground. We want to bury the placenta so that their soul can be reunited with it when the time comes. Some cultures, not a lot, will eat it. We see it a lot of times in the West. We see it in some parts of Mexican American culture and some Anglo-Americans, which is just a fancier way of saying white Americans. It's so popular that you can actually take your placenta, have it shipped to a company where it is dehydrated and turned into a pill. So you don't have to actually like eat it.
California living.
That's the California way. We're going to turn it into a pill. Now, the belief for eating it is, if this placenta has been packed full of nutrients for 9 months, the mom should eat it to get the nutrients back into her body. Now, medically, scientifically, is there any proof that you get nutrients from eating the placenta? No, but who cares? It's one of those things that as long as you're not making me eat the placenta, exactly. I'm like, as long as you don't make me eat it, do whatever makes you happy. There's no proof that says it's going to hurt you either. So you know what? Sometimes medicine is wrong. Maybe there are benefits. Maybe it's the placebo effect. So you can, when you give birth, your doctor, I don't know if they'll judge you, but you can say, can I have that back?
I was about to say
In
that.
Michigan, we will.
To be fair, I had to have
Most of them.
I had to have 2 teeth removed a couple years ago, which was not fun. More fun than giving birth, I'm sure.
No.
Oh God. I had to go have them removed. And I thought the orthodontist assistant was going to think I was nuts, but I was like, can I have those back? And she very sweetly goes, yeah, you grew them. And I'm like, thank you. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I made them. Let me have them back.
See, my mom said that I wasn't normal for doing that.
To be fair, my friend is like, what are you going to do with those? And I'm like, I don't know. They're just sitting in a jar. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. To be fair, when I finally clean out my parents' house, I'll probably find a jar of my baby teeth that my mom kept.
Right.
What was she going to do with them? I don't know. Now, breastfeeding historically has been the main way that we feed our newborns. When you are first producing milk from your mammary glands or your breasts, the first milk that comes out is usually called colostrum. So it is thicker and yellower than regular milk. So some cultures think it's bad milk. They think it's kind of like cleaning out the ducts and that you don't want to feed that to your baby. Science has figured out that that's what's packed full of nutrients. If you can get your baby to eat it, it's really helpful for them. In reality, though, that's why I included the little image that says fed is best. I love the campaign of fed is best. In the mommy world, there are mommy wars over should you breastfeed? Should you bottle feed? If you pump and bottle feed, are you a lazy mom? No, you're just feeding your baby. As long as your baby is getting the nutrients they need, who cares how you're feeding them?
Yeah, right.
Some can't produce milk. So I'm going to tell my mom's business. When my mom had me back in the 80s, she produced way more milk than I could eat.
Some women do.
Yep. And she befriended a woman at the hospital who then she found out this poor woman couldn't produce any breast milk. And her son, who she just had, who was like a day younger than me, was allergic to all the formulas available in 1983, which I'm sure there were like 2 formulas, not as many. So this poor mom was trying to figure out where she could get like goat's milk or something. And my mom, being just a nice person, was like, I make too much, you don't make enough, we can strike up a deal. So they struck up a friendship. They still check in with each other 42 years later, talk to each other on the phone. They bonded and they trusted each other so much that my mom actually said a couple of times while hanging out, both babies got hungry and my mom just instinctively like picked up each one and had one on each breast and was like, I'm making too much milk, like somebody's got to eat it. Nowadays, there are milk banks where you can donate your milk and moms in need can basically apply to get, I don't know that you have to pay for it, but you can get milk. So the same kind of situation. And that has happened throughout human history. We've had wet nurses, people who nurse other people's babies. It's really common. We just have a tendency in America because we sexualize breasts. We think it's yucky. It wasn't a sexual thing. She was just feeding a baby, but I thought it was very sweet of my mom.
It is.
I'm like, you're such a good lady.
Big deal.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mentioned with twilight sleep about mother-child bonding. Poor bonding between parents and children, unfortunately, has been linked to what's called failure to thrive. Failure to thrive is basically what happens when we have a little baby who is healthy. They don't have any like genetic risk factors. They're getting all their nutrients, but for some reason, they're not growing and developing like they should be. It's an unfortunate thing because it's really, in my opinion, kind of a label for something that we don't know what it is yet. It's just called failure to thrive, where we say on paper, the baby should be doing great, but for some reason they're not. It can be linked to failed bonding or poor bonding. That can also lead to child abuse. Now, realistically, child abuse is its own whole situation. And sometimes you can still be very bonded with your parent and they can still be abusive. But sometimes we see that failure of bonding linked to it. It can also be linked to psychological problems. If you don't have a parental figure in your life, that can lead to, basically, it forces the kid to grow up a lot faster than other kids. And the parentification of them, I think of, I'll say it as a joke about my generation, but I'm not trying to be like, we're built different. But like the amount of latchkey kids in my generation where you just took care of yourself after school because you're like, mom's got to work and she doesn't get out of work till 5 and I'm out of school at 3. So I'm just going to go home and entertain myself for 2 hours. Don't answer the door. It's probably why I still hide when somebody knocks on my door. I'm like, no, who is it?
I think.
It'll be my friend, like, open the door. And I'm like, no, I wasn't expecting you. No. Now, in the Vietnamese culture, what can look like a failure to bond Really what it is the idea that spirits are attracted to babies. Babies just left the spirit world. They just came to our world. So they're a little closer to the spirit world. And we need to protect the baby. How do they protect the baby? By not drawing a lot of attention to the baby. It's very similar to evil eye. In America, we think if you want kids and you find out you're pregnant, you're telling everybody. And the whole pregnancy, you're announcing the gender, you're announcing the due date, you're announcing the health. And that's great. And then when the baby gets here, all over Facebook and Instagram, everybody sees that baby because you're excited. In the Vietnamese belief, you're not going to do that, not for the first little bit of their life. You're going to keep it a little more hidden. You might say, hey, the birth went well, everybody's healthy, but you're not posting pictures everywhere. You're not bringing the baby everywhere. To an American, that can look like, oh my God, they're not bonding with their baby. But for them, they're saying, no, I'm very bonded with my baby and I need to protect them. So I'm going to keep them as safe spiritually as possible. In naming, typically American culture as well. Since the advent of sonograms to be able to tell the baby's sex, we love figuring out names way in advance. Even if you say, I want to go the old school way and I don't want to know the baby's sex, you probably still will come up with a couple of lists of names to choose from. I think, okay, more random lore of my childhood. So my initials spell SAS, S-A-S, which explains a lot about me. But it could have been so much funnier. My parents almost named me Anne Shirley, A-S-S. My initials were going to be Ass, Anne Shirley Seacard. And gratefully, my parents said, oh, hold on, she's going to get bullied in school. And I'm like, I would have been. But to be fair, as an adult, because I find that funny, I would have had monogrammed everything. Because what are you going to tell me I can't? Yeah, I know it says ass. Those are my initials. Deal with it. They also, at one point, my dad recommended the name Jacqueline Danielle, which sounds pretty, until my mom had a moment of, are you trying to name her after Jack Daniels, your favorite drink? And my dad said, yeah. Like, yeah. So we usually pick out names way in advance because we want to come up with a name that means something to us, that sounds pretty. Other cultures, you wait at least a week in Indian and most Asian cultures. This is to consult astrology. Now, when we say astrology here, I don't just mean, ooh, they're going to be a Scorpio. I mean their full natal chart, where you are figuring out every little bit of this baby's personality. Is it going to be 100% accurate? I would say probably not. As they grow in age, they might be different than what their astrological chart says, but you're supposed to consult it to find a good name for that baby. It doesn't mean they're rejecting the baby just because they haven't named them yet. Even in America, every once in a while, people will have their old birth certificate will just say like baby girl C-card because you don't know what to name your kid yet. And realistically, even when you come up with names, I've talked to parents who have said like, yeah, the whole pregnancy, I had a list of 5 boys' names, 5 girls' names. But the second this baby got here, my brain said, no, I need a different name. Those are not your names. I got to find a different one.
My mom said she named me in the hospital.
Yeah, sometimes it just comes to you too. And you're just like, yes.
She said, I wanted something that went with my name. I'm like, oh, okay. So she combined my name and then her name.
Okay.
Anna Maria.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Now, unfortunately, sometimes rejection of infants does happen. It can happen on the individual level. Sometimes when you don't want to be pregnant and you can't afford to take care of a baby, sometimes we put them up for adoption. That is technically rejection. It doesn't mean you hate the baby or don't wish the best for them. You just might recognize that now's not a good time for me, and I need to give this baby the best life they can have. Sometimes it's cultural. We see it tied a lot to patriarchies. In a patriarchy, we talked about patriarchies versus matriarchies. And in a patriarchy, it's usually a lot of emphasis placed on boys over girls, and that boys bring honor to the family and girls do not. A prime example of this was the one-child policy in China, which went for about 35 years, 1980 to 2015. So that was pretty recent in the grand scheme of things. This act said you were only allowed to have one child. Now, what happens if you get pregnant again? It could be as minimal as a really hefty fine. It could be as extreme as forced abortion. If you found out you were very, very early stages of pregnancy, you would be either pressured in or forced to abort that pregnancy. So you have a patriarchal society where little boys are valued over little girls, so much so that it said if your first kid is a girl, you're bringing shame and dishonor on not just you, but your whole lineage. So you have your in-laws, you have your grandparents, everybody pressuring you to have a little boy. So what happens when a little girl comes out? A lot of them were given up for adoption. Many were just straight up abandoned, and unfortunately, a few of them were killed. What's fascinating is, I'll say mess around and find out. It's gonna keep my job as opposed to F around and find out. China is now witnessing what happened because of the one-child policy. So what happened is a whole bunch of little girls in China were given up for adoption, but no families in China were gonna adopt them because they needed to have boys. Now, as an anthropologist, does it break my heart that most of those Chinese little girls got taken away from their culture? Yeah, that does. I feel bad for them that they're severed from their cultural ties. But in reality, what I'm grateful for is all those little, not all, but many of those little girls got adopted out to Europe and North America by parents who were desperate to have kids and couldn't. So yeah, I'm sad for them that they have that cultural sever, but realistically, I'm grateful that so many of them got loving homes. But we basically sent away women for 35 years. There weren't too many women being born and staying in China. Now, China has a bachelor problem, and China is constantly saying, why do we have so many unmarried men? Where are the women? And the rest of the world is saying, I know where they are. You sent them all away. You killed some of them. Like, of course there's no one for your heterosexual men to marry. You got rid of them. So it's a little frustrating that now China is acting like, what? I'm like, these are the consequences of your own actions. You did this. And I feel bad for the unmarried men because it's also not their fault. They weren't the ones sending them away. So I'm like, now you have, the whole point of this was China was fearing they were going to become overpopulated, and now they're having the opposite effect where there's no one getting married and having babies. And I'm like, China, what did you do?
I still think there's something behind that though.
I don't know. So on that note, I'm going to segue into death. Now, for those of you on Zoom and in person, my little warning, as I always say, I do try to bring up some fun things. I try to keep it light, even though we are talking about death. Absolutely. And that's what I was going to say. I don't know what everybody's going through in their life. So if you are having an issue, if you need to step out or take a pause, go for it. I am in no way going to be like, get your butt back in here. No, take a break. This, self-care. So in Western society, I talked about how we've medicalized birth. We've done the same thing with death. Very, very commonly, people are passing away in hospitals. Now, realistically, I know the reason for that is because we're trying to save their life. We call 911 when someone is dying because we hope they can revive them. But realistically, what that ends up doing is just making a lot of people die in hospitals. Now, for the most part, I'm healthy right now. So if I keel over mid-lecture, I want you to call 911. Like, please call the authorities, get my butt to a hospital. So more and more, we need more cultural sensitivity for hospital and healthcare workers. I'm now even seeing a growing number of people in our country calling themselves death doulas, which is basically a doula is similar to a midwife for childbirth. This is kind of to help you when you have terminal illnesses, help you prepare.
Hospice?
Similar, but it's more to help you, like hospice kind of eases your pain and helps you with that. A death doula is more like, hey, your spirit and your preparations of like, you know you're gonna die. Let's get your funeral
Prayers.
set up. Yeah, your affairs in order. Let's get all this ready so you can pick out your burial plot now, things like that. But a lot of times in Western society, we don't like talking about death.
I never heard of that.
Yeah, it's a newer thing. But I like it. I think it sounds interesting and I think it's kind of needed. If I knew I was going to die, I would want someone to help me prep and guide me spiritually and like financially, like so I'm not leaving my loved ones scrambling to figure out what I want. Mind you, that sounds nice when I say it that way.
Yeah.
Instead, what happens is I'm with my loved ones and I just casually bring up morbid things and it freaks them out when I'll be like, hey, if I die, and they're like, Stephanie, I'm like, I just want you to know what I want.
Make sure you get it right.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law says that every summer we're up at the cottage where we're putting her ashes.
Yes,
It's like repeat. I'm like, Mom, we know.
we know.
Got this. It's also in your will.
Uh-huh.
We will abide.
Now, when we do have a patient that has a fatal illness, when we know it's going to result in death, Americans love independence. So we usually say, it's my God-given right as an individual to know my diagnosis. Versus some cultures will favor not telling the patient directly and instead telling either the parent if a child or telling the immediate family. And basically the understanding is that's kind of a harsh thing to hear. And some of us, if we are dying, we don't want to hear it from the medical professional using medical jargon and stuff like that. We want to hear it from someone we love and trust. If that sounds appealing to you, you can basically sign away and say like, I don't want to be told. Washington State offers that option when you check into a hospital in Washington State. It will ask you if you are diagnosed with a fatal illness, do you want to know? And you can just say, no, let me live out the end of my days blissfully unaware. And I mean, that is an age-old icebreaker question of like, if somebody could tell you when you're going to die, do you want to know? Me personally, I don't think I do. I think I just, don't let me know. I have anxiety, don't tell me. If you say I have 24 hours, I'm going to spend the first 23 panicking about what to do. And then the last hour going, oh crap. If you don't want to know, you can always make somebody else your medical power of attorney, where legally they can make all of your medical decisions for you and talk to the doctor. If you ever want advice on going through all that, it's not fun. We had to do that for my mom when she got Alzheimer's because she could not make her own decisions. Don't tell her that. She'd be pissed to find out. But yeah.
She had Alzheimer's.
We had a few times.
Well, right now. So
Yeah, we had at the beginning.
Tell her not.
We had at the beginning because she had started to notice slipping and started to be like, is something going on with me? And we're like, yeah, now it's so far advanced, she wouldn't even know. Yeah. But yeah, I had to be her local power of attorney because we'd take her to the doctor and they'd ask her like, Sandy, how you doing? How many kids do you have? Okay, it's me and my sister. She looked at the doctor and was like, 4 or 5. And I'm like, no, what? No, unless you had a very exciting life before I came into the world. No. I'm like, so yeah, sometimes you have to be the power of attorney where you're making the decisions.
Does she sometimes not recognize you guys? Or?
Yeah. I'm not trying to be a bummer. She is now in a nursing home and it is so far advanced that she basically just sleeps all day. So she's not even, she will every once in a while, I will take a win when I get a win. Sometimes she will look at you and there's no recognition, and then she'll randomly just look at me and go, "Hi, sweetheart." And I'm like, "Hi, hi." Oh, she's asleep again. Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it. I'm like, she really liked the necklace I had on the other day. She just woke up long enough to go, "Pretty." And I'm like, "Thank you. It is a pretty necklace." I'm like, "I will wear it again for you." Now, there's two different types of kind of end of life care: palliative care and hospice. Realistically, both are kind of focused on comfort over cure. When you get palliative care or hospice care, it is when you have a fatal illness, meaning there is no cure, it will eventually kill you. We get this kind of care to make sure that the people are as comfortable as possible. Just because there's no cure for cancer doesn't mean you have to be in pain. We can give you morphine. There is a woman on Instagram I follow. I think her name is Nurse Penny. She is a retired hospice nurse. She cracks me up. But she has talked about that she's like, yeah, I've had like the patient's kids be upset that I'm giving mom morphine. And they're like, "Oh, wasn't that just going to knock her out?" And she's like, she's in excruciating pain. She doesn't know where she is. Let her be a little high and at least comfortable. Like, just if she's cool with it, I'm cool with it. But a lot of times we hear hospice and we think, "Oh my gosh, they're going to die tomorrow." And I will use myself as an example. My mom's in a nursing home. Like a month ago, they recommended you should call hospice. And I'm not going to lie, my gut reaction was, "Oh my God, are we there already?" And they're like, "It's not for that. Hospice is just like a really good advocate." They got her a hospital bed. They got her a wheelchair. They've brought her extra Depends, not to tell all her business. They have been amazing. They have really helped make sure that while my mom's in a nursing home, she's as comfortable as possible. She's not paranoid, because unfortunately that's how her Alzheimer's manifested. So yeah, it's been really, really helpful. Now, this is where I will try not to be like a bummer, but sometimes we are in situations where we can't make decisions for ourselves and we don't have a power of attorney. If you are worried about what's going to happen to you, if you slip into a coma or something like that, you may want to create an advance directive. It is a written statement of a person's wishes regarding medical treatment should the person be unable to communicate them. So it's not a power of attorney. A power of attorney says, right now, even though my mom can technically communicate, I'm the one making her medical decisions. An advance directive says, if something happens to me who's otherwise healthy and I'm being kept alive by machines, this is what I want to have happen to my body. Some people will choose a DNR, which means do not resuscitate. Think of, let's say you're 105 years old. I'd say that's a pretty good life. And let's say you have a whole bunch of fatal issues that are going to take you out eventually. You might say, "Hey, if I'm at the nursing home and I keel over, just let me go. I'm 105. Some people will sign that and say, "I don't want you to do CPR, which could damage me more. I'm 105. I have a frail little body." So you instead say, "Just let me go peacefully." Some states, about 9, I believe, it might be up to 10, but 9 have laws in place that will let you elect physician-assisted suicide. Now, don't panic. That does not mean just if you are having a really bad day, you can go to your doctor and say, "End it, I'm done." It's not that easy. You have to be diagnosed with a fatal issue with no cure, And you have to go through a bunch of red tape. Your doctor has to sign in triplicate. Like, they have to approve. This person is never going to heal. They're never going to get better. And eventually it will kill them, and it might be painful. This gives you the option to kind of put yourself to sleep peacefully. Now, realistically, I know a lot of people would say any kind of suicide is unacceptable. There are religious reasons for that. Thankfully, we're not here to debate that, but instead to say I don't want to say it's nice, because that sounds like, isn't it nice? But I do personally kind of like the idea of giving an out that's safer. Because realistically, if someone does want to end their life, they're probably going to find ways to do that. Versus this is a medical way that is going to take them out, but in a peaceful way that is not painful, it's not messy, it's nothing like that. Now, the reason why we have some of these laws and such in place, this is Karen Ann Quinlan. In 1975, at the age of 21, she went to a party, as you do in the 70s, and as many people have done in the 70s and outside the 70s, she unfortunately mixed alcohol with tranquilizer medication. Don't do that. That is very dangerous. It put her in a coma. She was basically hooked up to machines that were breathing for her, feeding her, and keeping her heart pumping. If they pulled the plug, so to speak, and turned those machines off, it was almost guaranteed that her body would not be able to keep her alive. Her parents argued that Karen didn't want to live like this. They said, that's not really living. The doctors were saying there's no known cure for her, but maybe someday there will be. And her parents were saying, yeah, but we don't want to leave our young girl hooked up to machines for like 3 decades while you hopefully find a cure. Yeah, in a hospital. Many people would argue that's not a very good life you're living. But the doctors were saying, well, if we pull the plug, that's murder, and we can't do that. So they had to go to court. It became a really big story. Now, realistically, it got a lot of Americans and other people in the world talking about what they would want to have happen to themselves. Realistically, you have to get like a notarized document, but I'm gonna type, I think I'm actually gonna make a binder that just says, so I'm dead, of like, this is what I want to have happen. And I will get a notary to approve my signature that I'm legit, and I'll just put it on the shelf and let my loved ones know where it is and be like, hopefully we don't need it, but just in case. Now, eventually, her parents did win the legal battle. They removed her off life support, and in no surprise, she passed away pretty quickly. They took the notoriety of her name and created a hospice foundation in 1980 that I believe is still in operation. So they basically took that notoriety and said, let's help other people so that if you have someone with a fatal illness, they can do advance directives of what they want to have happen. If you were in the 90s like I was, you know the name Dr. Jack Kevorkian, but if you don't, he was an American pathologist. They gave him, in my opinion, a very metal nickname. They called him Dr. Death, which makes him sound like a Superman villain. Like, I think there might actually be a Superman villain named Dr. Death. But it's because he was a doctor and he was a champion for physician-assisted suicide. Now, the problem is, this was back in the 90s, and at the time, where he was operating, physician-assisted suicide was not legal. So he was breaking the law. And according to the law, he was committing murder. And I understand, in legal speak, he was ending people's lives. Now, from my understanding is, these patients were coming to him and saying, hey, I have this fatal illness. It is absolutely killing me, but very slowly. I am in a lot of pain. I am leaving a lot of medical bills for my loved ones. I don't want to do that. Can you please help me end my life as peacefully as possible? And he would go to them and bring a concoction of medications to end their life. But like I said, some people were saying he's championing patients' rights, he's a saint. Others were saying, my God, he's a serial killer. And America was really, really divided. That's why he was on like the cover of Time.
Maybe a movie about him.
I believe so. In 1998, he was arrested and convicted of second-degree murder in the death of Thomas Yoke. Thomas Yoke was from Michigan. So not only was this an international story, it was a local story. Everybody was talking about this. He was released in 2007 and he passed away in 2011. The good news is, even on the final exam, I'm not going to make you tell me where you think he lands morally or whether you believe in it, but good to know the name of what he was doing. This is just a nicer photo of him, but with his setup. Now, I understand why it creeped some people out because he wanted to come to the patients. So he basically set up like a windowless van with this setup. I understand windowless vans have a bad connotation. We expect you to be snatching people off the streets. So some people were thinking, oh my God, what is this man doing? Now, get your tissues ready. But if you want to watch a good documentary about physician-assisted suicide, How to Die in Oregon is a great documentary. But be forewarned, I had to pause it halfway through because I was sobbing. It follows real life people in Oregon who have elected physician-assisted suicide. And it basically talks to them about why they think it's a good option. But yeah, it's a really fascinating documentary, but I'm an easy crier anyways. So I was sitting there like, I was like, I gotta turn it off. I gotta take a break and go like hug my cat or something for a minute.
Were you able to finish it though?
I was able to finish it. It was good. I just needed a break. Now, we mentioned that some societies are more expressive than others, and where that really ties in is how we grieve. Even in our own culture, grieving is a very personal thing. Not everybody's grief looks the same as everyone else's. I will admit, when I was younger and my grandpa passed away, it was my mom's dad, and I remember my mom is a very emotional person. But the day of the funeral, she did not shed a tear. And that was because she was in full like operation mode. She was checking on her mom. She was checking on her siblings. She was making sure everything at the funeral was up to par and good. And it wasn't until I think like 1 or 2 days later that she broke down. And I was all of like 14. So for me, that was a big lesson of like, man, I thought grief was going to be like really just sobbing at the funeral, but she was in like focus mode. Grief wailing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I didn't right away either, and I thought I was messed up for it.
No.
But I did after.
Yeah, sometimes it just hits you later. The day of, you're so focused that you're just, yeah, yep.
It's just her, she was, yeah.
Absolutely. So grief wailing is not just crying, but it is when you utter a prolonged cry. Galanti brings up Mr. Murad's family, who was Arab American. And in the Arab cultures, a lot of them do grief wailing. If you've never heard it, it can be very jarring. You can literally hear the pain. For Americans, we would say that's an at-home activity. For Mr. Murad's family, he died in a hospital and they immediately started the wailing. Now, realistically, it was in the middle of the night. A lot of those call buttons started lighting up because the American patients were wondering what the heck is happening. The doctors tried to calm these women, but their culture says, no, you need to make a lot of noise. As this spirit departs this world, we need to make damn sure they know we're going to miss them. And this is how we do it. So rather than just yelling at them or kicking them out, I thought it was genius. They moved them to the hospital chapel, which is non-denominational, and it's a little removed from patient rooms. So they said, you can be as loud as you want here. We just can't have you scaring the crap out of the other patients. Like, we understand it. We're not going to tell you not to do it. We just can't have everyone panicking. So I thought that was a good, like, compromise. Realistically, I'm looking at the time. There's no way I'm getting through everything. So anything that I don't get to will not be on the exam because that's not fair. So we'll get to what we get to. But I'm looking at the time and I'm like, whew, 6:49. So organ donation and autopsies. In our culture, we usually, if you die suddenly, we want an autopsy, which is where a medical pathologist goes in, basically dissects you to figure out what killed you. A lot of times too, we place emphasis on organ donation. Me personally, I'm an organ donor because this is my own personal belief. I don't think I'm going to need my body parts when I'm dead. I think my spirit, or however you want to call it, will do whatever it needs to do. But the body, I'm not going to need it. So if somebody else can get some use from it, great, go for it. But a lot of cultures don't want that. In Orthodox Jewish and Muslim beliefs, the idea is that the body has to remain whole for resurrection. The idea that God is going to come welcome us all home at some point, but you have to have everything included. So that is why, kind of tied into the placental burial, that you bury things like that. The idea is that once you are also buried, you will be reunited in the spirit world and have your intact body again. Now, I'm going to kind of go over quickly without too fast, but some funerary practices. We can't forget the funeral strippers. I believe I told you about them at the beginning of the semester. Still a fascinating little glimpse into Taiwanese culture. In the US, the two most common forms of end of life, what's the word I'm looking for? Preparations, I guess. We usually either bury people or cremate them. I'll get into, I think I'll have time to get into a few other examples, but historically around the world, there's quite a few different ways of taking care of the body after the spirit leaves. Mummification is one of them. That is practiced kind of all over the world. One of the examples I'm going to bring up are bog bodies. It's a type of mummification. Then, not mummification, I'm going to bring up sky burials and Viking Norse boat burials. That's just kind of the lead in. Now, mummification, a lot of times when we hear mummies, we think ancient Egypt. And that's because they were really prolific with making mummies. And they're some of the most widely known ones. But mummification refers to the methods of embalming or treating the dead body using either nature or ritual to take away moisture and dry out and preserve the body. It's been practiced in every continent, well, except for Antarctica, because we don't have too much going on there, human-wise. Just a bunch of cute penguins that we know of. But it's also really common in the Incan Empire in South America. The woman on the slide is La Doncella, which I believe is like the princess. She was discovered in the late 90s up in the Andes Mountains. So ancient Egypt used ritual to mummify. The Incan Empire used nature. Sometimes if we put a dead body in a very, very dry, arid place, either the desert or up in the mountains where there's not a lot of moisture, the body naturally mummifies. What's fascinating with her is she is so well preserved that we still get to see her clothing, her hairstyle, her fingernails. Like, she is very well preserved. She's now kept in a climate-controlled lab so we can study her more. Where I have complicated feelings about this. I'm an anthropologist, so of course I want to know as much as we can about the Incan Empire. That is fascinating. Normally things like clothes and hair don't survive the archaeological record. She is an amazing specimen. And then on the other hand, I say, hey, that was her resting place. It's great that we found her and we can study her and take a bunch of pictures, but can we put her back now? Like, that's her resting place. So I'm like, I would like to repatriate her back to the Andes. I understand maybe not putting her in like a touristy area. We don't want her disturbed again, but I think we should put her back. Put her back. That's me. Like, let's put her back. Nowadays, if we look at especially ancient Egyptian mummies, there aren't too many of them left. One of the reasons is we ate them. Yeah, and not me, but like medieval Europeans and Victorians. So we made something called mummia, where we would take Egyptian mummies. They're dried out, so we would grind them into a powder and then mix them into an elixir. And it was supposed to cure all sorts of ailments. Did it? No. We also use them to make art, like makeup and paint. If you go to a museum and you see a painting painted with mummy brown, it is a paint color made with actual ground up mummy. Nowadays, you can still find the hue in paint color called mummy brown, but it is of course not made with real mummies. Now, realistically, were they getting a whole bunch of mummies from Egypt? No. So they just kept saying, we're going to find these bodies and disinter them modern in medieval times and turn them into mummies and then make mummia from it. Realistically, it didn't really cure anything, but it is a little gross. It's a little factoid that we ate some of them. Bog bodies are mummified bodies that were sacrificial victims. It's a human cadaver put into a peat bog to basically mummify them naturally. Peat bogs are really good at preserving organic materials like skin and hair. This guy is so well preserved. You can see his fingers, you can see his skin, his wrinkles, his hair, and he has a noose around his neck still. So he was killed and then placed into the bog. We're not 100% sure if it was like a criminal or just a volunteer. With that part, we're not sure on. But we have found bog bodies throughout Europe, including Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, the UK, and a whole bunch in Ireland. And peat bogs are really good at preserving organic remains. We've also found bog butter. It was a jar of like prehistoric butter that somebody put in the bog to preserve it and then probably forgot about it. And then some archaeologist found it thousands of years later and was like, holy crap, butter. And you could still spread it. I wouldn't recommend eating it, but... Sky burials creep a lot of people out, but sky burials are not pushing us into the sky, but rather welcoming beings from the sky to come feast on us. So realistically, not at all. I know that's one of the reasons why I bring it up. It is very rare. Pretty much only today, it is still practiced in one small area in Tibet. Basically, the idea is giving your body back to nature. And me personally, I'm looking into green burials. I would like to be buried really within the earth. Turned into a tree. That would be fun. So I'm looking into it. This is the same basic concept. It's just a little more grotesque. You take the dead body up to the top of the mountain and place it out where it is encouraged for vultures to come down and feast upon you. Nowadays, you have to have special permission to be buried in that way, and it is in a closed off area. We can't have it in an area where tourists are going to come around. Not only is it going to scar them for life, we also view it as a cemetery. You wouldn't want someone messing up your burial plot. It's the same basic concept. It's 7 o'clock. I need to stop.
Good stuff though.
Good. Yeah. Feel free to check out the following slides on your own, but like I said, anything remaining on the last couple slides, I will not ask you about on the exam. Maybe an extra credit question, but I'm not going to ask you on the exam because I didn't go over it. I did say bog bodies. Yep.
They're on there.
They're on there.
It's on my list. Burial.
This is our last lecture. Next week will be your final exam. It'll be set up exactly like the first two. I'm going to make it available starting this Saturday a little early because it'll be due the following Friday. The semester technically ends on Friday, so I can't have it due like the Saturday. So it'll be due on May 1st. If anybody wants an in-person exam, please let me know. I'd be happy to do that. But otherwise, that's it. That's all I have. Thank you for a fun semester.
Thank you.
Good luck on your exams. I'm sure you'll do wonderful, but.
Nice meeting you all.
We gotta
You guys have a wonderful year.
explains it all.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.